shout out to Hal Steinbrenner, because before the season even ended, he says, Brian Cashman's going nowhere. And by the end of the season, he's getting a long-term deal, and he's going nowhere. And I'll tell you this, and you know this as much as I do, Steve. If Brian Cashman was free, there would be 30 other teams lined up saying, listen, we'll give you a piece of the organization. Come and run my organization.
He would be Theo Epstein.
Absolutely.
Leaving Boston. Same sort of thing.
Absolutely. The guy's a genius. He's been the best GM in professional sports for the last 30 years. And the fact that Yankee fans don't like him, and I'll say this, I'm a Yankee fan, as you can see. You guys are a bunch of morons. And I've been saying this over and over again here in New York. Stupid. Go ahead, Speedy.
So I'm going to go back to the Cardinals because they're in a position where they should be able to make the playoffs now. And we've seen the Cardinals in the past be kind of do better when they're an underdog type thing, both their World Series and even 3 years ago when they made the NLCS beating the Braves the way they did. Albert Pujols' final year, Yadier Molina, Adam Wainwright. Could you see them being the sleeper of the National League and spoil maybe a powerhouse like the Dodgers and the Mets?
It's possible, but I don't see them having the firepower in starting pitching. I mean, they have obviously the offense with Goldschmidt and Arenado, who've been fantastic this season, may finish 1-2 in the NL MVP race. But in terms of pitching, I don't know. I mean, Montgomery's been great. Can he continue to do that? Jose Quintana came in at the trade deadline as well, has been very good. But will Wainwright be able to continue what he's doing? I wouldn't put it past him. But still, when you put those guys up against who the Dodgers can throw out there, who the Mets can throw out there in the playoffs, and they're going to have to face probably both of those teams if they want to get to the World Series. It seems like it's a great story in St. Louis, but it's a very tall order to do anything more than basically get into the playoffs, at least in my book.
We are talking to USA Today baseball writer and reporter Steve Gardner. Steve, people forget about the Atlanta Braves. This is the same team that won the World Series last year. This is the same team. If you look at their record in the second half, I think they have the second best record in all of the league in the second half of the season. They have played great baseball. Yes, they're racing and trying to catch up to the Mets. I don't think they're going to catch. Every Met fan asks me, do you think the Braves are going to catch them? No, but I wouldn't necessarily think just because the Braves aren't the number one team in the division that they can't beat the Mets in a series. I absolutely believe the Braves could beat the Mets in a series. The Mets have the better starting pitching. I think the Braves have the better bullpen. So what is your thoughts to the Atlanta Braves? Are the Mets afraid of the Atlanta Braves?
I don't know that they're afraid, but they should definitely respect them because this Atlanta team, if you look at the entire roster top to bottom, I would say this is better than the Atlanta team that won the World Series last year. The younger players that have come in, a healthy Ronald Acuna, Spencer Strider, another gem tonight, has just been phenomenal. And this team is dangerous. I don't think we know how good this Atlanta team is because we haven't seen how good they can be. And again, they peaked at the end of last season, won the World Series. They could be doing the same thing here. And I don't want to dismiss them and just talk about the Braves or just talk about the Mets and the Dodgers. The Braves are a legitimate threat here to possibly play spoiler, to possibly go back to the World Series again because they have the experience. And as I said, I think they're better than they were last year.
And they don't have their one star that is coming back too in Albies. And when he comes back into that lineup, that's an even scarier lineup than we thought.
Absolutely. And Austin Riley has been phenomenal this year too. May be their best player so far this season.
So I want to shift to the contracts that we saw. Julio Rodriguez just got a big one, 14 years, starts at $210, but could get up to $470 million over the course with incentives. We saw the Rays pay Wander Franco at the start of the year. Obviously, the Padres with Tatis last year before the whole 80-game suspension thing. They paid him a 13-year deal. Do you think this kind of thing is the new norm, especially for these, I guess, maybe smaller market teams or these secondary cities that mainly didn't get the reputation before?
I think it is with the star players, and I think that's kind of what baseball has evolved into is, you get a handful or however many stars you can afford, and just load up with young players, because those young players, the reason partly that the Braves are so well set up for the future is, they got Acuna and Albies and Riley, all those guys locked in at kind of, below market deals to where they can go out and make moves if they need to. Like last year, going and getting all those outfielders, Soler, as your MVP of the NLCS, and Adam Duvall, those guys like that. It gives you that flexibility and still locks in those players that are so good and are so young for an extended period of time. I think we will see like Juan Soto coming up. What kind of contract is he going to be? He's only going to be 26, in a couple of years when he ends up being a free agent. Those kinds of players, I think, are going to be worth the whatever, 200, 300, 400 million dollars, maybe 500 in Soto's case. Money. And so, I mean, that's where and because the young players are still inexpensive, you have a good farm system. You can supplement, those star players with really good role players, especially if your farm system like Atlanta keeps turning out the Spencer Striders and Vaughn Grissams and guys like that, Michael Harris.
Yeah. We are talking to USA Today baseball writer and reporter Steve Gardner. Last question for me, Steve. The Hall of Fame, okay? And I know you're a voter because you're working for the USA Today. You're a writer. You've been a writer for years. David Ortiz, okay?
All right.
I have a lot of respect for the man, but this man has been accused for taking steroids. It's proven that he did take steroids. Why is it that he was a first ballot Hall of Famer, okay? And you look at, I don't know, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, how about this? Jeff Kent, who wasn't even accused of taking steroids. All these guys, some of the great players in baseball history. And yes, they did steroids. Bud Selig allowed it, and he's in the Hall of Fame. How does that make sense? Okay? Why is it that David Ortiz goes and rides off to the sunset, and he did steroids, and all these other guys are never going to sniff the Hall of Fame?
All right. First, with your premise, David Ortiz never tested positive for steroids during a major league baseball administered test.
Okay.
There were leaks about a possible positive, may have been a false positive, could have been a real positive during the survey test that was supposed to be anonymous before they instituted the testing program league-wide. So for me, as a Hall of Fame voter, when I look at the whole breadth of David Ortiz's career, I can't count that whatever, the leaked positive test as a definite test, a definite yes. And every single year that David Ortiz played in the major leagues after that, when testing was in fact universal and administered to all players, he came up negative every single time. To me, that's enough evidence that David Ortiz, for the majority of his career, was a clean, whatever you want to put quotes around that, that's fine. But to me, he did not break any of baseball's rules and did not run afoul of the drug testing policy. And for that, I give him a complete pass and look at his accomplishments up and down throughout his career. And to me, first ballot Hall of Famer, yes, indeed.
All right. So that same report, Alex Rodriguez was leaked first. And if he wasn't caught the second time, if he was leaked, would you have voted Alex Rodriguez into the Hall of Fame?
Alex Rodriguez came out and admitted, though. I mean, that was the thing, and congratulations to him for coming clean. But, he said, I took this drug that was banned, and, I did it because I was under pressure to live up to my contract. Now, other players may have other reasons. Andy Pettit, wanted to get healthy from an injury, and that's why he said that, he admitted to that. Alex Rodriguez, Alex Rodriguez is a difficult player to understand. Let's just say that. And why he does the things that he does, we could go on forever. But I think because number one, he admitted it, and then baseball had evidence. They suspended him for a year. That to me is enough to disqualify him. So that's how I make the distinction between those two.
All right, my last question. Besides the steroid guys, the big ones, any guy that you think should be in the Hall of Fame that isn't?
Let's see. Lou Whitaker is an older player that I think has gotten close a couple of times on the Veterans Committee. Yeah. And I think he deserves to be in. Kenny Lofton is another guy that I think has been overlooked, didn't get a fair shake. I'll tell you another guy too, Johan Santana. If I were eligible to vote when he came on the ballot and was one and done, I think that's one of the biggest travesties of the players who were on and off and didn't get 5% in their first year. Johan Santana was a fabulous pitcher. And because of injuries, his career wasn't as long as some of the others. But when he was right, he was almost Sandy Koufaxian. And I think he would be a guy that I would say, if I could go back in time and give him, a couple more years on the ballot, I think his percentage would go up, 20, 30, 40, may not get to 75%, but I think he'd have a much better showing.
How about Albert Bell? How about Jeff Kent? Two players that had fantastic careers. Albert Bell, for 6 years straight, was one of the top 3 hitters in baseball. But the writers don't like him. He was very disrespectful to the writers. So you know what? We're not going to put him in the Hall of Fame. We're going to let him sit on the outskirts. The man, I feel so bad. And listen, I know Albert's not a nice guy. I've heard a lot of stories about him. He's really an ass. But even though he's an ass, he's still a great player. And why he's not in the Hall of Fame with the numbers he had as a player in the time that he was as dominant as he was is really catastrophe. It really is. So
yeah, I think in the fact that he didn't win an MVP award, the individual awards again voted on by the baseball writers.
That's right. That's
so
not
it's
fair.
That vicious circle again. But I think that's part of it. And I think Albert Bell, if we go back, a couple more decades beyond, Dick Allen is another guy that has had a lot of talk about his career. Similar guys, didn't really get along with the media that well and may have been punished for that. Jeff Kent, I will tell you, I've had the opportunity to vote for Jeff Kent and have not. And one of the reasons, obviously the offense is great, but defensively, base running, his career started late, so his career totals were not, slam dunk, shall we say. So Jeff Kent, I think, is a borderline case to where I could find more people to put on the ballot ahead of Jeff Kent before putting him on mine.
Steve, we really appreciate you, man. And I follow you. I've read some of your stories. You're a good guy, and we'll continue reading all the stuff that you post. And we definitely want to get you on at the end of the season to hear what your thoughts are throughout the playoffs and whoever wins the World Series. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much. We'll see how wrong I will be, at the end of the season. Well, it usually happens that way.
Well, let me tell you, a lot of people say I'm wrong half the time too, but it's great being right when you are.
Exactly. Pound those every time.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.